I want to be honest with you before this starts. This list is not going to make you feel good. Some of you own something from this list right now. Some of you spent real money on it. Some of you defended it to people who knew better, and you were confident when you did it, and you are going to think about that confidence in about 8 minutes. That is fine. It happens to everyone. It happened to me first. Consider this the briefing you should have had. This list is not about watches. What this list is about is the cognitive error that each purchase represents. Some entries will make you laugh. One will definitely make you slightly angry. So, let's begin. Number 10. Daniel Wellington and MVMT. In 2015, the world discovered that if you put a watch on a model in good lighting and gave 50 mid-size influencers a discount code, you could sell a $12 quartz movement in a $40 case for $200. This was not a watch industry breakthrough. It was a marketing breakthrough. The watch was incidental. Daniel Wellington is the cleaner version of this. Minimalist dials, NATO straps, interchangeable case color, a price that suggested the watch was somehow superior to a Casio by virtue of costing 8 times more. The movement inside was a Miyota, or an ETA quartz, functional, standard, found in watches at every price point. The strap was genuine leather in the sense that it was made from a material that had at some point been an animal. The case back was stamped steel. The crystal scratched in months if you looked at it wrong. MVMT did the same thing with slightly more aggressive marketing and a story about disrupting the watch industry. The disruption turned out to be sell a cheap watch for a lot of money using Instagram. Movado Group purchased MVMT for $200 million in 2018 because that is a very effective business model. It is not, however, a watch. Both brands built their distribution around the insight that the influencer's audience does not research the product. They trust the person showing it. When the person holding the watch is someone whose lifestyle you want, the watch absorbs that aspiration. The discount code completes the transaction by adding the feeling that you got access to something others are paying more for. You got a deal. You're in. You were never in. Everyone got the code. The code refreshed every week. The price on the website was set specifically to make the discounted price feel like a discovery. The watch inside the packaging did not change based on the influencer who sold it to you. It was the same movement, the same case, the same strap, regardless of whether the person holding it had 10,000 followers or 10 million. The specific error is believing that paying more than the component cost signals quality. It doesn't. It signals a successful marketing operation. A $200 DW has the same timekeeping accuracy as a $30 Casio and inferior build quality. The Casio does not feel the need to tell you it's minimalist. It just is. This watch was an entry-level deception. The next entry is industrial-scale psychological manipulation. Number 9. Invicta. Invicta lists a watch for $2,000. The same watch is perpetually available for $89. The $2,000 price has never been paid by a human being for this watch. The $89 price is what the watch is worth. The $2,000 price exists for one reason: to make you feel like you got a deal. This is a pricing strategy called reference pricing, and retailers have used it for decades. What makes Invicta remarkable is the audacity of the ratio. A watch listed at $2,000 selling for $89 represents a 95% discount. The watch community refers to this as Invicta's MSRP problem. A more accurate description is a MSRP fiction. The retail price was never real. It was constructed specifically to give the discount number something dramatic to work against. The watches themselves occupy a particular category. They are large, with elaborate case details, polished accents, and a visual weight that reads as expensive from across a room. They wear like status objects. The person who receives a large, heavy, detailed watch in a branded box with a "This retailed at $2,000" origin story has received something that communicates a story to everyone who sees it. The story is not true. The communication continues regardless. At the actual selling price, often between $50 and $200, Invicta produces reasonable watches with reliable movements at prices the market supports honestly. The Pro Diver, with a Japanese automatic movement at around $80, is a legitimate object. There is nothing wrong with that watch at that price. The dishonesty is entirely in the architecture of presentation around it. You did not get a $2,000 watch for $89. You got an $89 watch delivered inside the fantasy that you did something clever. The fantasy is the product. The watch is what it comes in. Now let's talk about the watch that got FTC's attention. Number 8. Filippo Loretti. Filippo Loretti raised millions of dollars on Kickstarter by selling the idea of an Italian watchmaking renaissance, a hidden gem, an artisanal atelier that the Swiss establishment didn't want you to find. Luxury for less, made possible by cutting out the middlemen, accessible to people who knew what real watchmaking looked like. The watches shipped from warehouses with no particular Italian connection. The movements were sourced through the standard channels, ETA-based calibers available to any buyer with a minimum order quantity. The cases were competent. The dials were reasonably executed. The customer service, for an extended period, operated through what the community described on forums as a script-reading pen pal arrangement. Forum responses that acknowledged problems without resolving them. Delays without explanations. Resolution via attrition. The specific cognitive error here is confusing romantic geography with provenance. Italian Renaissance sounds like a watch with a story. It is a name. The watch's actual story is standard components, assembled elsewhere, sold to people who responded to a Kickstarter pitch built on a narrative that the components themselves did not support. A Tissot PRX costs $400 and contains a movement assembled by a Swiss manufacturer with quality control standards you can verify. It does not have a romantic origin story. It is simply better than most things that cost more and try harder to tell you a story. The $1 million Filippo Loretti raised on Kickstarter is an accurate measure of how many people paid for the story rather than the watch. The money bought a lot of watches, but none of them contained an Italian Renaissance. The phrasing survives the product because it was always more durable than the object it was attached to. From a fiction about provenance to a fiction about what your money bought. Number 7. TAG Heuer Formula 1 Quartz. TAG Heuer's Formula 1 Quartz retails around $1,500. The movement inside is a Ronda quartz caliber, a Ronda 6004 or similar. It is a reliable, broadly available, broadly affordable movement that costs a small fraction of the watch's price. The same movement family powers watches at a wide range of price points, many of them well below where the Formula 1 sits. To understand why this matters, you need to understand what a quartz movement does and does not require. A quartz movement is an electronic timekeeping device. It requires a battery, an oscillator, and basic regulation. There is no rotor, no escapement, no mainspring, no winding mechanism. The precision of a quartz watch is determined almost entirely by the quality of its oscillator and the discipline of its regulation, neither of which requires a famous name on the dial. There is a version of this argument that TAG Heuer fans make, and it is worth hearing. The Formula 1's case construction is good. The sapphire crystal is genuine. The finishing on the bracelet is above what you would find in the movement's natural price territory. The brand's connection to motorsport is real and documented. The case can be worn confidently in situations where you would not wear a Seiko. All of that is true. The question is not whether the Formula 1 is a bad watch. It is whether $1,500 for a Ronda quartz is an honest price. At $1,500, you are in the territory of the Tudor Black Bay 36, which contains an in-house movement the brand developed itself, regulated to COSC chronometer standard, and which depreciates more slowly than anything in the TAG Heuer Formula 1 line. You are also in range of the Omega Aquaterra, which runs a META-certified master chronometer movement verified by an independent Swiss testing institute to perform at a standard the Formula 1 quartz cannot approach. The Seiko 5 Automatic at under $300 contains a movement that is mechanically more interesting than any quartz caliber at any price. The Citizen Eco Drive at $200 contains solar-powered quartz technology developed in-house and never needs a battery. The TAG Heuer Formula 1 at $1,500 contains a Ronda quartz, the community prices at around $25. You are paying for the case. You are paying for the sapphire crystal. You are paying for the TAG Heuer name on the dial and the Formula 1 association. None of those are disqualifying reasons to buy a watch if you understand the transaction. The error is believing the price reflects movement quality, which it does not. And at $1,500, at this point in history, you deserve to know that. So, the top 6 on this list cost more than the bottom 4. Some of them cost significantly more. The buying error gets more expensive as we go. Before we continue, which brand on this list surprises you most so far? Drop it below. Number 6. Hublot Classic Fusion. Entry. Hublot's Big Bang is a legitimate watch. In-house column wheel chronograph movement, architectural case design, genuine material innovation, a visual identity strong enough that it has become one of the most recognizable watches in the world. When you pay Big Bang prices, you pay for something the brand actually built and spent real engineering time on. The Classic Fusion Titanium Entry is not that watch. At around $10,000, it runs a base automatic movement, sourced and branded rather than manufactured in-house. The case is competent titanium. The dial is minimalist and not the good kind. It seemed like designers just remained for the sake of it, without rhyme or reason. Also, bracelet integration at this tier is not the brand's strongest work. The resale figures are the clue to how much this watch is actually rated. Take a Classic Fusion Titanium Entry to a dealer 6 months after purchase and ask what it's worth. The answer is roughly 50% of what you paid. In the time it took you to walk to your car from the boutique, you lost several $1,000s of net worth. This is not unusual for luxury goods, but the Classic Fusion's depreciation is notably steep compared to the Big Bang above it in the catalog, which is the watch whose identity you were borrowing when you bought it. The error is assuming that the Big Bang's reputation transfers across the catalog. It does not. The entry Classic Fusion is paying Big Bang prices for a watch that was designed to introduce buyers to the brand, not to represent it. At $10,000, you are in the territory of the Omega Speedmaster Mitas edition, the Grand Seiko SBGA 229 with its spring drive movement, the Tudor Pelagos with its in-house manufacture movement. Every one of those watches depreciates more slowly and gives you more for the money in the caseback. You are not buying a $10,000 watch. You are buying the Hublot name at the price point Hublot charges to write its name on a case. From a luxury name on an entry case to an entire national identity built on a story the government already questioned. Number 5. Shinola Runwell. The Shinola pitch was genuinely moving. A manufacturing operation in Detroit. American workers. Jobs in a city that had been hollowed out by decades of industrial decline. The slogan, "Where American is made," and the words, "Built in Detroit," stamped on the caseback. In 2016, the Federal Trade Commission investigated Shinola and found that 100% of the components in certain Shinola watches were imported. The quartz movements came from Ronda AG, a Swiss manufacturer that is a part owner of Shinola's parent company. The cases, the hands, the crystals. Switzerland and Thailand. In Detroit, workers assembled those imported components and applied the caseback text. Shinola's founder said the all, or virtually all, domestic content standard required by the FTC was almost unattainable. He was right that it's a high bar. What he did not address is who set the emotional expectation. The marketing created the expectation that "built in Detroit" described something substantively more American than Swiss components assembled in a Detroit factory. The watches now read "built in Detroit" with Swiss and imported parts. That is accurate. It is also not the sentence people were buying when they paid $600 for a Runwell in 2014. At $600, you are competing directly with Tissot, with Mito, with watches built by brands that have been making movements themselves for 100 years, that charge a price connected to what is actually in the case. Shinola charges $600 for a story that required a federal regulator to edit. The story, post-edit, is less interesting than the original, and the watch was never the point. If you want to support American manufacturing and job creation in Detroit, and you have $600, the most direct way to do that is probably not to buy a watch with a Swiss movement and a corrected caseback. Donate to a Detroit Workforce Development Fund. The outcome will be more honest than the marketing that led you to the watch counter in the first place. Now, this next mistake will cost you real money. Number 4. IWC Portofino. Entry 2026. IWC makes the Portugueser, the pilot's watch chronograph, the Ingenieur. These are serious mechanical objects built by people who have been making complications in Schaffhausen since 1868. When IWC invests in a movement, the investment is evident in the caseback. The entry Portofino is not where IWC invests. The base caliber 35111 is developed from an ETA 2892. a broadly sourced, broadly used movement that powers watches at a wide range of price points from a wide range of brands. The ETA 2892 is a good movement. It does its job reliably. It is also not the movement you buy when you pay $5,000 to a manufacturer with IWC's depth of in-house capability. At Jaeger-LeCoultre, the entry Master Ultra Thin shows you finished movement bridges, decorated to a standard that earns the price. At A. Lange & Söhne, nothing leaves the factory without hand finishing on every surface. At IWC, the entry Portofino tells you, you have found the front door, the house is through there, and it costs more to get in. That is a legitimate commercial strategy. The buyer who purchases a Portofino and then discovers the Portugieser 7-day perpetual has been served. They thought they were getting an entry-level watch, but they actually aren't. If you are already getting angry, this next one will make you angrier. Number 3. Bremont Terra Nova. The Cerato era. Bremont under Nick and Giles English was something. British manufacturer. Military connections. Every watch had to pass an ejection seat testing protocol before it was shipped. This protocol was literally borrowed from Martin Baker, the company that makes the seats that save RAF pilots' lives. The brand had a community because it had a story that was specific, verifiable, and not available from anyone else. In 2023, Bill Ackman's investment brought in Davide Cerato as CEO. Cerato's job was scale. Move the price point down, move the volume up, move the brand from niche to global. What arrived at Watches and Wonders 2024 was the result of that brief. A new logo, the Wayfinder Compass Rose, which the community compared to a navigation app icon. A new collection, the Terra Nova, a cushion-cased field watch that bore no resemblance to anything Bremont had produced in 22 years. A positioning shift from aviation heritage to land-sea-air exploration, generic enough to describe any watch brand. Nick and Giles posted identical Instagram captions acknowledging the change and then faded from the brand they built. By 2026, the new Bremont was producing Terra Nova jumping hours at around $6,000. This watch was built around a Sellita movement, DLC-coded everything, and a Felix the Cat limited edition. The Felix the Cat cartoon character on the dial of a watch, descended from a brand that used ejection seat tests as a quality standard, seems interesting. Or what do you think? 500 pieces. The community's response did not require translation. The Terra Nova is not a bad watch. The Sellita runs reliably. The 904 L steel is a good material. The DLC finish is clean. None of that is the point. You are not buying a watch. You are buying a brand name that now describes a different brand than the one that earned it. The English Brothers Bremont is no longer available. The Cerato Bremont costs what the English Brothers Bremont used to cost. That gap is what you're paying for when you buy the Terra Nova in 2026. For $5,000 in 2026, you can own a Tudor Black Bay. The Black Bay is a watch Cerato himself helped develop. From a brand that has done the work of building its own in-house movement and earned collector attention through product rather than inherited nostalgia. The irony writes itself. The man who reinvented Tudor is now running a brand that is becoming everything Tudor was trying not to be. From a brand that sold its soul to a brand that never had one in the first place. Almost there. Number 2. Panerai Luminor DO. Panerai's history is not marketing. It is documented. The brand supplied watches to the Italian Navy's underwater assault units operating in the Mediterranean during the Second World War. The crown-protecting device, the lever that locks the crown and defines the silhouette of every Luminor ever made, was an engineering solution for divers who needed to operate the crown while wearing thick gloves in cold water. The cushion case was strapped to a wetsuit. The watches were rated to 300 meters because the people wearing them needed to go there. But the Luminor DO is water-resistant to 30 meters. 30 meters means that rain is fine. Accidental splashes, fine, but you definitely cannot swim in it. You also cannot go near a pool edge wearing it and make a mistake. The original Luminor was rated to 300 meters. The Italian Navy Frogmen, this watch visually inherits its design from being operated at depths where 30 meters of water resistance would not have kept them alive. The DO exists because contemporary buyers want slim watches. Fine. Panerai made a slim watch. The case is 8.8 millimeters thick. It sits beautifully on the wrist. It is a genuinely elegant object, and several of the dial executions in the Do range are among the cleanest Panerai has produced in years. None of that is the problem. The problem is the price and what it claims. Spending around $7,000 for the titanium Luminor Do puts you at the price point of a Tudor Pelagos FXD, which is rated to 500 meters, carries an in-house COSC movement, and was designed for the Swiss Navy Diving School. The same money buys you an Omega Seamaster Planet Ocean, rated to 600 meters, with a META-certified master chronometer movement, independently verified by the Swiss Federal Institute of Metrology. Both of those watches go where Panerai's origin story says a Panerai should go. The crown-protecting device is still there on the Luminor Do. The lever that seals the crown against water pressure in deep water environments, designed for 300 meters, deployed at 30, still there. Basically, the engineering purpose of the most recognizable design element in the entire Panerai catalog has been removed, while the visual element has been preserved intact. Every time you engage that lever, you perform a ritual designed for Italian frogmen. Your watch cannot follow them into the water. You are wearing the ceremony without the function, and you paid $7,000 for the privilege. And then there is number 1, the category that makes everything else on this list look like a well-thought decision. Before we move on to the next part, let me tell you this. Most people don't realize this, but buying a watch the wrong way can cost you thousands, and you won't even notice it until it's too late. You walk into a store or browse online, and everything looks the same, but behind the scenes, there's a system. Prices aren't always fair, availability is controlled, and one bad decision can leave you overpaying for something that doesn't even hold its value. That's why I created a complete free insider guide to buying watches. Inside, you'll find the best watches to buy, the watches to avoid, and how to choose a watch that actually fits your style and budget long term. The goal is simple. I'll help you stop guessing and start buying smart. You'll find the free guide in the pinned comment and description. Now, let's move on to the next part. Number 1. Gucci, Armani, and Versace fashion house watches. Fashion house watches are the only category on this list where the brand involved does not care about watchmaking. Not cares a little, does not care. The watches are licensed to third-party manufacturers. ETA-sourced movements in cases designed by the fashion brand's accessory department, produced to a specification that prioritizes the logo and the retail price above every other consideration. Gucci watches are not made by Gucci watchmakers. There are no Gucci watchmakers. The watches are produced under license by a manufacturer whose job is to put the Gucci logo on a case that will sell at a price the Gucci customer will pay, with movements sourced from the same suppliers used by hundreds of other brands. The case was designed by someone whose primary expertise is handbags. The quality control for the watchmaking component was outsourced to a factory that does not have Gucci's interest in the product beyond completing the contract. Armani Exchange watches retail between $100 and $200. Giorgio Armani watches retail between $300 and $1,000. Versace watches retail between $500 and $2,000. At none of these price points is there anything inside the watch that justifies the premium over what a Seiko, a Tissot, or a Citizen offers at the same price, with an actual watchmaking operation behind it. The Tissot PRX, at around $500, contains a movement produced in Le Locle by a manufacturer that has been making Swiss movements since 1853. The Seiko Presage, at around $400, contains a movement produced in Shizuoka by engineers who have spent their careers optimizing that caliber. The Citizen ProMaster, at under $500, contains a movement developed by a company whose entire existence is organized around movement technology. None of these watches has a Fashion Week presence. None of them are worn by celebrities in magazine spreads. All of them are fundamentally superior purchases as watches. The specific error is treating a fashion brand's watch as a watch. It is not a watch. It is a branded accessory from a company that makes its real margin in leather goods, clothing, and fragrance. The watch borrows the brand's equity and prices itself accordingly. You are paying for the logo's address, for what it means to have that name on your wrist in a specific social context, and not for what the name is actually attached to. There is nothing wrong with buying a status object for its status function. That is a legitimate transaction if you understand what you are doing. The error is believing the fashion house name on the dial guarantees you anything about the watch underneath it. It does not. The movement does not know whose name is on the dial. It keeps time the same way, regardless of the logo above it, which is to say, it keeps time the same way a watch a tenth of the price keeps time. Because it is, in most cases, the same movement. 10 brands, 10 different errors. The same underlying mistake in all of them. Every purchase on this list confused the story for the object. The influencer discount code that never expired. The phantom MSRP that existed only to make the real price feel like a discovery. The Italian heritage that was a warehouse. The Formula One logo costs $1,500 while the movement inside costs $25. The national identity the FTC had to correct in writing. The legacy house charging legacy prices for an entry movement. The brand that sold its identity to investors and left its community holding watches from a company that no longer exists as they knew it. The diver afraid of water. The fashion logo on a caliber that does not know whose name is on the dial. In each case, the buyer paid for something that existed outside the physical object. A narrative, a status signal, a feeling of discovery, a proximity to prestige, a discount that felt personal, a heritage that felt borrowed. None of those motivations are wrong. People have always bought objects for reasons that extend beyond the object's technical specifications. That is not stupidity. That is how objects carry meaning. The Rolex Submariner costs what it costs in part because of what it means to wear one, and that meaning is not purely derived from the movement architecture. The error is not buying for meaning. The error is not knowing you are buying for meaning. The buyer who knows they are paying for the TAG Heuer name and the Formula One connection and the way the watch reads at a business lunch is making a clear-eyed decision with full information. The buyer who believes the $1,500 price reflects a $1,500 movement is operating on bad data. The watch itself will tell you the truth if you look at it honestly. Turn it over. Open the case back if you can. Read the water resistance rating on the crown guard. Ask what the movement is and how much that movement costs in other watches. These answers are available. They are not hidden. Most buyers never ask because the marketing created enough emotional momentum that asking felt unnecessary. On this list, asking was the one thing that would have changed the outcome. The people who ask, who look up the movement before they pay, who check what the water resistance rating actually permits, who research what the FTC said about the marketing claim on the caseback, either buy with clarity or buy something else. Both are valid outcomes. Now you know to ask, will you buy better now? Drop in the comments. Which one of these have you owned? I'm not here to judge. I owned 2 things from this list before I knew what I was looking at. Learning the rules is a process, and the brands involved are very good at making sure you don't learn them too early. Like this video and subscribe.